All right. We're good. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to another session of Poetry Time at Goethe Abansoro. These sessions are made so that we can have a conversation with poets and kind of delve a little deeper into their thought processes by way of asking them to read to certain themes that have been pre-selected. Of course, what we try to do is to allow for certain artistic lassitude so that they can walk around their themes if they so please. This program, Poetry Time at Goethe Abansoro, is actually one of the programs that is run by the Writers Project of Ghana and the Goethe Institute Ghana. So you're most welcome for to this evening's event. We'll be running for about an hour. So let me introduce the guests that I have today. The easy part is that they are both deeply involved in looking good. They like fashion. But this is Ni Amati Few. He is a lawyer and he is a poet. I have met him reading and also doing recitals. A little bit familiar with his poetry, but I'm very sure that his body of work extends beyond what I would ever imagine. And so that's Ni Amati. And next, beside him, he has a real name, but I'm not going to venture. We'll call him 100% for this evening. 100% is a very well known face in the local poetry scene and beyond. He has a book, at least one that I know of, called Logo Ligi Locomotion. And as far as I can tell, out of the publication of that book and the work he does in the literary space, he has a session that runs uh, every month, every last Friday of every month at the Inosu Kukun. Yeah. And he calls it the LLP series, right? Yeah. So that is also 100%. He has a large body of work as well, of which I'm very familiar with only a little. And so 100% and Niamate, welcome to this session of Poetry Time.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for tonight, we have made a theme that tries to assess succession, essentially. If we see ourselves as writers or as poets, and we know that there have been progenitors, how do we see ourselves as receiving what they have taught, what they have taught, and how are we then going to present ourselves? You see, so the whole idea of mentorship, of finding our own voice, is what we want to investigate in more detail this evening. So we will be looking at the idea of taking up the mantle and also connect it to the burden of youth, which would sometimes think of in terms of the imposter syndrome. Um, are we good enough to be doing what we say we are doing? Um, and as we progress, we'd also want to see how you establish your voice in terms of what you want to talk about. If you're a young person, do you have enough experience to make bold statements about life? And so these are what we would like to investigate from the poet's perspective this evening. So what we'll do during the reading is to allow for questions, and the audience, both here and online, feel free to send in questions or any comments, and then we'll break into the program and allow Ni, Mate, and 100% to answer them. So let's start. We are going to allow the poets to deliver a poem on any theme at all of their own choosing. We are not going to restrict you for the first cycle. So whatever has caught your fancy in terms of a theme that you want to present on tonight, please go ahead. And I'd like to start with you, 100%.
Okay. I thought it best to start off with a poem that is in the book, but one that accompanies music, just to give people an idea of my performance, abilities. So this particular poem is called Deep. It's in the book, but I think I have all the words in my head, so we should be good. If they could just play the instrumental, it should be good. Okay, I'm hearing it. Low volume low. Yeah. At the same time, I'm just running low, just in case. Okay, so here's deep. I like to be deep, but not all the time. Sometimes I like to recline and rewind in my mind. Take a chill pill, procrastinate, not to learn or design. Spit a freestyle, not worry about who hears or designs whether it's good or not. I have been referred to as a coconut. Black outside with white stripes like a polka dot. You may not get it, but what they mean is I'm not black enough. Because I don't speak tree or eat well, I'm not coconut. Screw cook and their caffeine. You see, I'm coffee and I'm sweet enough. Sometimes that's the attitude you ought to get when you're deep enough. But even this deep, sometimes I discriminate or hate or alienate. I have to eliminate my stubbornness. Gotta stop seeing folk as commoners. Each of us is special, yes, there's a lot more to us. So respect my opinion. I respect yours. Remember, there are limits to what is right or wrong. The world nowadays has become too sensitive. So wrong is all right, and right kind of tentative. Low files ignored, petty files called. Too many chickens calling fowls indoors. Too many leaders not wanting to serve. Too many leaders just trying to serve responsibilities. This is not limited to politicians. See, in my humble opinion, we ain't well together as the human race, but right there is the problem. We see life as competition, so we can't work together cordially. White race, black race, everything now is a rat race, so malpractice sets in. And I'm not talking about it, drug cases, human trafficking, rape and hate crime, the inhumanity. All this in the 21st century, what's the calamity? Churches now take consultations to research insanity. We are eroding the ecosystem at the same time as morality. Globally, we can't agree on global warming. We all went to school but are still blind to the warning. Morality is rare these days, but try and find it. And when you do, be brave. Don't act so hard to hide it, because you can be wrong and right at the same time. So take time when jumping to conclusion, because you can fall at the same time. Majority ain't right. Minority ain't either. So how do we find the answers to our questions? I don't have the solution. Just know it's about balance. So let me balance these words off with a moment of silence. Thank you. Mm. Yes. The what I think in my I call it career. It's funny, you know, you call it career because, but what I've come to realize is different people respond to the different sides of the poem, and I say a poem has different sides. So you could read it, I could perform it for you without the instrumentals a cappella. I could perform it for you with the instrumental, which gives it a different touch. It's sort of like reading a play in a book. You're not visualizing the characters. You're doing everything. A poem also has the same thing. So sometimes depending on who the audience is, I choose to go at it, in this way. And it's one of the reasons why I created the EP, which is as a result of poems, a few poems in here with musical backing, just to show people that it's possible. Mm, yes. You've actually hit the nail on the head in terms of, because this is just me penning down my thoughts, or let me say, a photograph of my thoughts during a certain day and the frustrations that I, as an artist and a human being, have with life. My personal frustrations with my life, and then also the grand ones, what I see going around. And there is an inconsistency, and it's it's frustrating. And I'm trying to figure it out, but I can't figure it out. And the one of the best things I think artists do sometimes when they're in that moment is, let me just share, let me just write it out. Hopefully a conversation could start with, hey, I resonate with what you said. What can we do? What are you doing about it? So that is, you are right. There's a theme of inconsistency, within. And these are just sometimes the things that I'm thinking, I don't have the solution, but it doesn't mean that I can't talk about it or try to do something to make things better.
And incidentally, this I think is one of the reasons why the artist's voice is so important, because you not only speak from your own experience, but it actually is a collective experience, because other people definitely feel the same way or think the same way. This is something that I think will come back to when we begin to speak about a person's voice, and whether it's something that we can trust if the person doesn't seem to have sufficient experience. So let's now come to you, Niamati. Let's take a poem,
Yeah.
and again, it's no restriction on theme. It can be anything.
Yes, no restriction on theme. But Martin, um, as the lawyer that I am, I have a preliminary legal objection.
Okay.
Martin, you didn't tell me I was paired with a professional poet. I'm in big trouble.
I don't think you're in big trouble. I've listened
I
to
mean,
poetry from you, and we'll let the audience decide.
Martin, I know my right. I know my right. He came here with a whole published book. I had a setup plan where I'll start with a very comical poem, but on this deep note, I believe I believe it's only appropriate that I respond with something quite thought provoking. So, on the same themes about penning out your thoughts,
Mhm.
this is a poem that I wrote about 3 years ago. It reflected the political climate then, and I believe it still reflects the present political climate. And I think it's quite deep, and so here it goes. It's no pun intended. Oh, esteemed umbrella, designed to save man from the wrath of the elements, why deniest thou us cherished raindrops in this extended drought? My parched throat remains voiceless, and my wallet empty as the promises I have heard 1,001 times from numerous determined conmen and notoriously proud patriots who say they can cause tulips to grow from concrete and sweet wine to pour from the skies. Enrich the soil with oil. Who cares if our blood boils in toil? We have a debate and we will be late. So policeman, create a way in this traffic for my V8. And each and every single district has people yelling, one for all for one. To mask our tears, hide our fears, while the parliament of owls wise beyond our years, keeps on with the years. Yeah, 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 yeah. In business, to make laws and cause laws. Yeah, 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 yeah. Now what yeah, 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 yeah. Na hena yewo grassroots no. Yeah, bread. When two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And this elephant, majestic and small, doesn't have but two tusks. No, countless tusks. Promises made. The problem is huge. And yet David did indeed defeat Goliath. Ghana's David, are your eyes focused on where the goal lies? Mother Ghana continues to borrow. Who cares about tomorrow? We can drink Joy Daddy to drown our sorrow. And talking about joy, who needs 100% when 99.7 gives us joy?
You know, I, it just struck me that in your bio, there is the name Pan Africanist. You know, you call yourself a Pan Africanist, no pun intended. Um, how how does a lawyer have an objection to a legal objection? Because I mean, you sound like a professional poet, right? So I can only object to your objection. But I I like the play of words, and sometimes I think that a person who creates may not even see the depth to which they've gone in their creation. Because I was looking at the play at the beginning when you started off with an umbrella, which was denying uh, even the parched earth from feeling the drops of rain. And you end up with an elephant, a small elephant. And I'm just looking at the political spectrum, and I see umbrellas and elephants. So many promises as well. And so, just like we did for the first poem, I want you to go a little beyond these lines and tell us what you want to say.
Well, the title of my poem has my disclaimer. No pun intended. If you saw a pun, that is your personal problem. But speaking about the political space, I believe that the present political climate, and in fact, more than present, the political climate that has been in Ghana ever since I can remember, and I'm not particularly interested in politics. In fact, I try as much as possible to stay very, very far from politics. Whenever I have the occasional brush with politics, politicians, it's all the same politricks. It persists either side, as if they are truly cut from the same cloth. And you always hear this narrative that the grassroots should not fight because at the top they are best friends. And it lends to reason that they really are then cut from one cloth. So the problem is not the piece of material here or the piece of material there. It's the cloth as a whole. That is where the problem should be addressed. If your problem is with one side, where you say this side is good and this side is bad, or you're on the other side and you look at it, I mean, the grass is greener always on the other side, not so. But the real issue is, why is it that no matter who comes, the narrative is the same. So it's these reflections that I put in the poem. The elephant and the umbrella, they all have what they bring to the table. I'm choosing my words very carefully.
We'll find the pun in them, don't worry.
But basically, it's a message to my audience that we deserve better, and we are not blind. Yes, we are not blind to everything that is going on. I'll stop for here.
Well, I thank you for this. I mean, you know, you mentioned in the poem, getting to the end, David did slay Goliath, and you ask an open question: Is there a Ghanaian David? So I think that the poem actually states clearly a certain displeasure with the status quo, and it's actually asking a question as to how can it change, and even goes as far as saying who can change it. And that would I think it's a very good opening. Lots of things to think about in terms of um, the ideas that you've presented, and so I would like us now to go into the next cycle of readings. Here we are going to look at the idea of mentorship. As an upcoming writer, one of the things that you always hear is a question about which other writers are you drawing from? You know, who are the writers who are inspiring your work? And sometimes, especially in the poetry space, there are people who would tell you that I learned from XYZ, and it's not only local. I mean, if you look at the very big poetry movements, they were sort of nurturing each other. So there's the Black Arts movement, etc. The Harlem poets, and so there's this idea that there is a line of mentorship, a line of teaching, and so we want to begin to explore from your perspectives and from your lived experience as poets, professional or otherwise. Who are the people who have influenced you, and are there any poems you've written that reflects the influence they've had on you?
Yes, for me, the poet that I think many know me today, really, my first inspiration was actually Saul Williams, and I think there was a movie that he did, Slam, in '98. I don't remember when I watched it, but I watched it and I was like, wow, what he's doing is amazing. There's a scene in the movie whereby he is in prison and he's about to be roughed up, and he breaks out into poetry, and it's an amazing thing, that he's doing. And what I put, wow, there's such power in this. I forgot about this movie until I was in South Africa for my university studies, and I was interested in poetry, but I only wrote poetry. I never bothered with performance until I was sharing my poems with a group of young poets in there, and I realized that their style of poetry was a bit different. Then I was introduced by a friend at the time to a gentleman who was known as Tumi. Tumi, who now goes by a different name, as he goes by the rap name Stu GT, but then he was Tumi, and he had this poem on an album called Tumi and the Volume. He was performing with the band, and the poem was called Yvonne. And when I heard this poem, I was like, look, I don't know, I want to do exactly what he's doing, because I was taken by his wordplay and everything. And the other person who had been inspiring me up to that point in terms of, call it hip hop or rap, was Jay-Z. But I didn't see Jay-Z particularly, even though I would see him as a poet. Tumi was doing, poetry. More recently, other people that have inspired me. There's a amazing poet in Kenya called Mufasa. Every time I'm on his Instagram page, I'm like, look, you're making this look too easy. I envy him in a beautiful way. And more recently, even this artist, I don't know what I'm pronouncing her name right, Iniko. Her writing for music, it challenges me, and I'm like, I want to get to that level. So every single day, there are artists that I'll see their work, and I'm like, wow, your wordplay, how you weave words, it wakes me up. It makes me like, I want to keep, doing this. And as a result, I strive to create, to serve that same inspiration, to others. And yes, for some of it comes in the writing. For some of them, I know that, look, you challenge me, I may never do exactly what you do, but I'll attempt. But somebody like me, I think I've written a number of poems that go in that direction. More of, so sometimes you can't tell whether it's rap or it's poetry. For me, it's like however you choose to take it, that should, but the message, really has been given.
Well, so could you give us a poem along those lines so that
Yes.
and the funny thing, there is another poet,
Yeah.
in the local poetry scene, way back when things were beginning to take off,
Okay.
who always referenced to me.
Oh, who is that?
Yeah,
Is it what's his name?
Yeah.
Is it DK?
it is
DK, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay. I'm revealing other things by even seeing.
Yes. I was wondering whether we should be mentioning names too, but yeah, he's the one. Yeah. So I mean, so that obviously it does say that the influence of Tumi, I mean, has reached way, way beyond his geographical location.
Okay, so this piece is titled Jesus Piece. That's the name of the poem. I'll not say much about it, but let me just get into it, and then you can talk about stuff to it. If love fails, at least I've got my Jesus piece. Piece of God made with plastic, a needless piece. I pray to God to give us all some Jesus peace, a piece of love, but he's been knocking for at least 3 weeks. Time's up. Hope you all have some Jesus peace. They say heaven is a place where all the Christians meet. What's a Christian? My bad, I thought they lived discreet. Not all who go to church believe he speaks. Forgive these peeps. Not all churchgoers are at least this deep. We come to church but sin for the sin too sweet. Play the game of go to hell with conviction, see. We instantly point fingers with religious speech or thoughts of course. No plank on my eye, I thought. So didn't see hypocrisy coming on board. Becoming captain of this boat, which is a hoax, but pause. With a connection to this deception, I create a ship on tour called relationship. Sin is the anchor on this baby. Quick, give me the fruit so I can bite and see reality shift. And blame you and not me. My future is unseen. I try to come clean, but without grace, I'm unseen. My heart seeks God, yet seeks the obscene. Matthew 6:6. Lord, I want to believe. So I hang your son around my neck to change my dreams, but don't have him in my heart, so my life's unclean. At least I look good. Tell those coming up to look hood. Good don't buy enough food to make you look cool around here. Our battery is not love, it's all fear. The battle is for survival. The main plan is I don't care. You see, I'm trying to see tomorrow with my family. The key to that door sometimes means dancing with insanity. Gravity is fictional, but sin holds you to the ground. They say Jesus is the way, but this way I have not found. So I act tough, mad bluff. I'm looking for peace, it's all locked. The path I'm on won't get me there. You see, I'm chicken, I got smallpox, but need God. Or more specifically, I need Jah. The weed told me and pointed to a clean, serene Jah. A vision of the Son of Man on a cross with clean hands, pierced like a criminal, all to clean man. That had me thinking. Why him and not we? We messed up the carpet, we made it unclean. They say that's the price of sin. I'm in thought with a glass of gin, holding my Jesus piece like a phone to a card of SIM, knowing there's truth to this Christianity. I'm thirsty, but the Christians are not giving me clarity. I guess I'm inadequate. Not perfect, a good addict, sick on life and its pleasures. At least I'm honest and not a graduate. But I need strength. Some of what that dude on the cross has. In the school of life, that right there is a hall pass. Next level peace. And I want 3 full bags. So I lean on him to disappear and not feel too bad. That's the trick to being found. The trick to being sound. Lose yourself in pain and what is known as fickle bounds of anger until you find the hidden sound, which is love and prosperity bound in a little file called humanity. But you have to lose yourself. To access this immunity, you must lose your wealth, lose your heart, your desires. You must lose your stealth, trade your invincibility cloak in order to renew your health and find peace. If love fails, at least I've got my Jesus peace. Peace of God made with plastic and needless peace. I pray to God to give us all some Jesus peace, a piece of love, but he's been knocking for at least 3 weeks. Time's up. Hope you all have some Jesus peace. Thank you.
Yeah. But we all hope to have some Jesus peace, ultimately, because the poem I kept looking for a sense of relief of this persona, this voice, and it does seem that the torture with which the voice began is not relieved. I mean, if I listen to the poem all the way to the end, I find the person still asking the same questions at the beginning as in the end. And even though they claim and offer us Jesus peace, it seems that the voice hasn't really gotten that peace. Tell us a little bit more about it.
It's sort of the reality I see within, let me say, just even in Ghana, not even bother going around. People claim to be Christians, still people claim to suffer. And I myself, as a Christian myself, I see that sometimes we dance around the terms. People know what to do. They just don't want to do it. So within the poem, you realize that the individual understands what needs to be done. It's just that they don't believe. Yeah, it's like, this is too simple. I can't do this. This looks better. This is the way I know it. So it's that I try to paint that space, what I call maybe that lukewarm space, because that is what that's what I see around. People know what to do, but still choose to not do. And it could be, even though this is speaking with regards, it sort of speaks to the conversation that we kind of have started here. Even with looking at the political, people know what to do, but they just choose not, to do it. So it would be nice if the poem had a very, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But the reality is that oftentimes that's not what happens. It's sad, but that is the reality that I see, and that's why I painted that way.
And before we come to your next poem, there's a message that came through on Instagram. Andy on Andy, who has joined the Instagram stream, says, "I think this is one of the best ways to write political poems." So I don't know if what he's suggesting is that is the best way to write a political poem without getting into trouble. But so says what you wanted to say. So I'm inviting you, Nia Mate, to also tell us a little bit about this whole idea of who has inspired your work in terms of mentoring. I use the word mentoring with, I know it's not exactly right, because I think that a mentor is somebody who is present. Yeah, but a lot of the time, the people who are giving the inspiration are remote. I mean, he mentioned the Tuma again, to me. Yeah, and so you also tell us about your inspiration.
So I'll start with a confession. I feel like I'm an imposter. I'll say this because I can't mention the name of two great external poets that I've looked at. For me, poetry means something entirely different. I'm an artist. You know my dad, Amaka and Amaka. Ever since I was born, I've been exposed to art. And my dad paints primarily. I've never seen that live. Till growing up, I discovered that I was an artist, but a different kind of artist. I had a different perspective when it came to words. Like how my dad has a different perspective when it comes to colors. And I remember the first poem I wrote, I don't even know if I knew what I was doing. I was in primary school. And I recall I had a studies teacher who was teaching mathematics. And then he was teaching my sister, and then I went to my laptop and I started typing something. And then he was so impressed that I didn't know what I was doing. And that's been my approach to poetry. And this...
I have a response, if you pardon me.
Yes.
You began by saying it was a confession. And so, I mean, the Catholic upbringing suggests that, I mean, when you go for confession, I mean, you will get your absolution. Unfortunately, I'm in a position where I have to reject your confession. You have no absolution because, as a matter of fact, what you have said is that there is a line of mentorship. There is inspiration. It's just that it wasn't in terms of poetry,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was getting there.
You were getting there. I
Yes.
jumped the gun.
No, but that's okay. It just shows that our minds are in sync.
Yes.
Because on that note, I would say that my dad has been it for me. Because every now and then, I would think of something that I found so clever. A play on words. And I mean, nobody was interested in, hey, listen to this. But my dad was just over the moon. Wow, did you say this? Wow. He saw what was in me before anyone else did. And he encouraged me. And speaking about the role of mentorship, it's unlike your kind of mentor, the ones you spoke about, which was quite distant. With this, those words of encouragement did amazing for me. And with that, to feel that your work is appreciated and for something to look towards to, I think it's immeasurable, it's priceless. And that was what inspired me to go on. And then every now and then when I'd write, I'd show it to him. And even then, he wasn't doing poetry. And then we started doing poetry together.
Yeah.
And I mean, the journey took off then. So if the question is who was my mentor, really it was my dad. It really was my dad. But on this theme, I wrote something. I wrote something around the theme of mentorship.
Okay.
And I mean, I wrote this yesterday. Actually,
really challenged you to write that.
You really did challenge me to write it. No, honestly speaking, I was panic stricken. This pressure. Okay, so what's the theme? What's the theme? Martin, tell me what's the theme. Anyway,
Yes.
I don't even have a title for this, but let's. All right.
Okay.
So I was told that for today, I'm to take up a mantle. To take your mind's preconceptions and then slowly dismantle. Now, if it truly is to dismantle that I will dismantle, then I beg of you to stay with this mantle. The end is achieved. Don't leave until together we reconstruct an anthill of wisdom. For you needn't break the anthill to steady the ant. Truancy is stupid. A true ant is wise. It is wisdom that will tell you that the pen is mightier than the sword. But it is a fienyansa that will tell you never to show up to a sword fight armed with a pen. Osonobroni nyansa na osonefie nyansa. Are you in search of an answer? What if I told you that the answer is within? What if I told you that all of your life you've been told lies? Not the lies that stay on your head, it's the lies that stay in your head. It's the lies that you have heard. But when you realize that within is where real lies, your potential is endless. What if I told you that you are greater than you can ever imagine? What if I told you that it was you that wrote the script and that you needn't stop at the margin? What if I told you that when you feel marginalized, those margins are only imagined? Just imagine. For now it may be nudging. Maybe your mind is not budging, but permit me to barge in. For now it may not add up, but eventually you'll sum it. It is only then that you'd realize you're already at the summit. And when the pressure is mounting, you have what it takes to peak. I don't want to hear you speak. You are young. Automatically you are wrong. Your voice doesn't matter. You have mass. You occupy space. But you don't matter. When you talk, you stutter. Your thoughts, they scatter. Over here, we disregard chatter. Shush. You are either naive or stupid, but I suspect the latter. And there goes your confidence in the gutter. That is the power of fear. It is fear that erodes potential. The rivalry between your potential and your fears is fierce. Even the world we live in is surrounded by fears. Stratosphere, thermosphere, making the atmosphere. Tell me, what makes your atmosphere? Do you allow it to surround you, cloud your judgment? Well, then I urge you to build for yourself hearts of oak that will know no phobia and surely never say die. But if you must, then may it be your true colors dyed into truer pigments, exhibiting the sheer brilliance with which you were molded. For the truth I bring to you today is that you are limitless. Now you can open your eyes. Now you can realize within is where real lies. Thank you.
There are parts of this poem that took the whole thing in a different direction, because I had always thought about the mentorship passing on in a positive light. But one of the things that you showed in your poem was that in just the same way a person can be damaged by either someone they look up to or by negative influences, or simply, as I would think, reading the wrong stuff, misdirection. And so I really didn't expect that, but I mean, you follow the wrong sort of mentor, you land in a ditch or something. I was looking at it in a more positive light. Well, so you brought something else in. I think that what unless you have a few words to say about that, I would happily jump on to the next
Yes,
theme.
I just wanted to briefly touch on the fact that the approach to mentorship is always from the position of the mentee, without realizing the huge role that the mentor has to play and the power that the mentor has. Because if you realize, there was a part of my poem where, I mean, the mentee was broken completely by the mentor, and that is the power. And it shows the sense of responsibility that mentors also have. That if there's someone that looks up to you, or in fact, if you're not aware that someone is looking up to you, I believe that everybody is a mentor. So in your relation and your interaction with people, it pays to be nice, to be kind, because you never know what someone will look up to you for. I find that everyone is capable of being a mentor, because there's an inherent human fallibility. Your mentor can fail you if you choose one person. But if you have a perspective where you find something good in everyone, then no mentor can disappoint you, because you take nuggets of wisdom here, you take some good here, you take some good here, and it's all good. All right.
I'm wondering whether this poetic streak follows you into the courtroom.
It does
It
actually.
does, huh?
My lawyers will confirm.
There's a message here from Professor Ladewo Sonu, who is following us online. So he says this is excellent, and he especially enjoyed the Jesus piece. Yes. Okay. So we go on, and as I mentioned, we also value your interaction. Those of us who have been able to make it here, and if you have any contributions to the conversation, please let us know, and we'll invite your comment. There should be an extra microphone, but if it's not there, we'll lend you one of those on the stage. Now, what we want to do is begin to look at your own development as a poet, as you've grown in establishing a voice, what you want to say, the things you care about, in the social context, um, I mean, even now, listening to the poems you've presented, one begins to get an idea of the kind of things that matter to you, even though I've restricted it very much. It still gives me a fair picture. And so we would invite a poem that you feel exemplifies what you think your mission as a poet is something that is touches on a theme that is important to your work. I mean, be it faith, be it love, be it despair or joy. There is probably something that is key to you establishing your voice. If there is, I'd like to invite you to give a poem that touches on that.
I'll say this before reading the poem. This poem that I'm about to share, that I don't know, for some, there are many themes that I write on. There are many things that are important to me, and it's very difficult for me to say I only do this and I kind of only do that. I think I'm blessed to look at things from different directions. However, one of the things that I find myself defaulting on is women. And strangely enough, when I experience things, or be it through a documentary or just people speaking, and I see women suffering, I feel the need to write about it, which is sort of strange because I am not a woman. I can't say I fully comprehend what it is women go through, but there's a need to write about it. So I would share one of those pieces. I title it Batgirl. Batgirl. And oh shoot, what's the page title? Just give me a second. Good.
And whilst we are at it, I would like to say that for those watching, you see a book in 100% hand. It's the Logo Ligi Locomotion. I mentioned it earlier. It's a publication of poetry that came out, I think, 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. 2
2
years
years
ago.
ago, yeah.
Thank you. So this is Batgirl. I don't like my bed. My dreams gave up, broke its wings, and wrote these things. My dreams plucked its feathers for me to lie on, for me to sink my head on this fake comfort, whilst the plumber in the afterlife connects my tears to pain. Walls have ears, but mattresses have eyes and fears to feel emotion. They can feel when a pear becomes rotten. My pear became rotten. The bed knows this but says nothing. Says nothing because it saw what the pear did. It saw what it hid. I can't trust him. My daddy loves me. My daddy loves me, yet sat on the bed. He sat on the bed, looked at my broken dreams, and dismissed the story about the pear. He said it was just a bear, a cuddly teddy, nothing I should fear, that my mind was just playing tricks on me. He couldn't see my nightmares, or didn't want to because the bed cushioned his perception, making him reject my grief. It cannot be trusted. My dad too. I thus slept on a mat on the floor, and for some weeks, I forgot that the two were cousins. Pear again visited me with his rottenness, confirming that there was no cushion to ease the pain. I felt the cold floor and watered it with tears as prayers to bloom through the concrete and bear a different fruit. Bear a fruit to witness this nightmare being streamed for all to see. Why don't any of you stop what is going on? Do you enjoy what you see? Bed, I held your leg for help, but all you did was sleep on me. I thus tried standing to sleep in the corner of my bedroom, but ended up running away in my dreams, only to end up lost in tears and found by my bed, who always brought me back and reminded me of our secrets. I thus decided to sleep like a bat. So with the help of a skipping rope and the hook that the ceiling fan used to hang on, I lay my bed and slept. This time, I had no nightmares. This time, I cried no tears. In the air, Pear couldn't use his magic mirror to turn things around and release another EP of rottenness. In the air, the problem and solution are closer than they appear. Both the problem and solution are sleeping on the woman. Today, however, she sleeps like a bat, alone, because she's tired of being slept on. Thank you.
This poem is very heavy with metaphor, and I think that it's one of those pieces that we could keep going over and over again and getting different layers of meaning every time we go over. But I am a bit curious about the bad girl part you know. I can tell that there's a lot of grief in this poem, but for some reason, you bad girl, and all of a sudden I started thinking about witchcraft and things like that. I don't think it was a fair interpretation. That because it seems that there's very heavy stuff going on here. So, if you even began with trying to unravel for us the metaphor of the bat, yes, and then maybe tell us a little bit more about the poem.
Okay, it's intentional, as you're right, because the poem is talking about abuse, more specifically rape. But and unfortunately, whenever that subject is approached, it could be happening close to you, but you have no idea that it's happening. So yes, you say Batgirl, and Batgirl is just to show the end of a poor girl at the fact that I'm speaking my truth, no one is minding me, so I decide to end things off. So the whole Batgirl is just saying that, well, this was my solution to my pain, to end things. And it's said that way because for me that loves comics, and yes, when you say Batgirl, it sounds like, wow, you're an action. And it, in a sense too, it's supposed to kind of show that, yeah, that was her potential. Unfortunately, it wasn't realized because no one decided to listen, to to her. And to just the one of the things that I want to point out to just make the poem a bit more clear is touching on the fruit of the pear. And that was very intentional because I didn't want to explicitly say what was going on in the poem. And so I used the fruit. And I used that specific fruit, not because I don't like pears or anything, but just because when you take the word rape and you turn it around as you're playing Scrabble, you can still get pear. So the pear is really a metaphor for the whole act, the whole act in there. But it's also to show that it's close to us sometimes, but we don't see it. People may be talking about it, may be happening in the same house, sometimes even in the same, but you have no idea that, oh, this is such it. So that's the reason why it was written. It feels a bit how should I put it? Like I'm trying to hide it, but it's just projecting what the reality is. When people come out and tell their story, people don't believe them. People is like, oh, what are you talking about? It can't be. So that's why the poem was crafted in that specific way.
I can't respond directly, but yes, thank you for that. I was just thinking that the whole pair rape as a metaphor, it's a kind of a metaphor within a metaphor. If you see the way you presented it. So let me yeah, you have a reaction.
I just wanted to find out because from my understanding of the poem, I gathered that at the end she committed suicide.
Yeah.
She did, and after that was peace.
Yes.
Okay.
After that was speech. From
Okay.
there, the
That was-
problem and the solution, everything you can see. You see, it's a weird way of looking at him, but it just and sometimes, as difficult as the subject is, I think that is the burden that falls on artists to sometimes touch on these things because until it is painted in that way, people sometimes are unable to appreciate some of these heavy issues that are being spoken about.
Yes, actually, it was to invite you also, Nia Amate, to give us a poem that you feel is representative of a primary theme in your writing.
So I've realized that I tend to shift more towards storytelling. For me, with storytelling, you are able to engage your audience because everybody wants to hear what the end of the story is. And so they are able to linger on your every word, and then it paints a picture. I like to paint pictures in the mind of my audience. So, on that theme, I have a poem. It's a story. It's a short story, and the title is Brief Romance. Brief Romance. Just a minute. She had little need for jewelry, for the beads of perspiration that adorned her neck were ample embellishment. Ah, I could hear the music in her steps as the soles of her feet gently caressed the polished wooden floor. Indeed, that was the only floor that I saw. She walked like she was dancing, and she danced with more grace than I found on the scalp of a nonagenarian. Her hips, they swayed like the gentle rocking of an oarless canoe over the still waters of the river Pra. Yes, Pra, for my heart was swept with one fleeting glance as I watched her dance over the wide expanse. I became nervous at once upon seeing her advance. I tried to change my stance just to enhance my overall appearance. I was in a trance, awaiting my chance at brief romance. And who said the only place a Christian can find romance is in the New Testament? Even there, it is found only after Acts. And so act I did. Taking a step in her direction, I mustered courage and walked with conviction, my face flustered with much affection. She surely must have felt the connection. Across her face, a smile broke. Ah, such perfection. Reaching forward, an introduction formed on my lips, but no reaction as she walked right past me into the warm embrace of her loving husband. Thank
Yeah, um, it's it's a lovely poem, but we can feel your pain, you know. Of course, the first thing that struck me was the fact that you were able to hold the rhyme, and it's really unusual. I mean, nowadays, you know, and I found that it flowed very well, and I was quite impressed, especially the first stanza. Um, so my first question would be, when it comes to your style of writing, whether rhyme for you is still quite important. I have noticed through the poems you presented, wordplay is certainly very important. You have very heavy play on words, but how about rhyme?
So I love rhyme. And for me, I feel like in most of my writing, rhymes do feature prominently. I fell in love with rhyme from a tender age, and in university, I tried, freestyle rapping, and for me, it was easier. It was easier to freestyle when I didn't think. The moment I tried to think, ah, I would flop. But when I just let go and let my mind go, it was rhyme that would keep me going. Because the moment I end the sentence, somehow the mechanism is that a rhyme just forms in my head about the next line and then it carries on. And it features in my creative process because I like to write under pressure at the last minute.
Well,
At the last
I'm
minute.
glad we helped you make you write some more.
Yes, and then when my creative juices are working, it's the rhyme that just keeps coming. So they feature prominently in most of my writing. Yes.
Yeah. Again, I have a message from Professor Ladewusu. He has actually a few messages. One of them was about prayer as a metaphor, and he says, "Reap the forbidden subject." And I think that was a brilliant poem. And then he also says that about rhyme, it makes two of you because he also uh, puts rhyme as one of the main schemes in his poetry. Yeah. So incidentally, time is, yeah, it does seem like it's just running away, and
Mhm.
I'm supposed to have a hard stop at around 8:20. It's about 5 minutes away. I still have two things. I mean, this is because we are actually having a really great time. So I'm going to make the hard stop a soft stop and run a little bit beyond 8:20. It's now 8:15, but that means that we probably have to drop one of the things. And
Okay.
there are two things that we're looking at still. One of them is a theme of your own choosing. I mean, I don't step in there. The second is to ask about whether you feel that you are where you ought to be in terms of your voice. Is it, do you ever have the fear that you are an imposter, like what he suggested? Have you already imbibed enough? You have sufficient experience that when you are telling somebody something, there is that sense of authenticity. This is believable. I didn't just make it up. I mean, I really have something behind me to show. And if not, the anxiety of performance, the anxiety of being the one to say it, whether it is true or not, is that something that features in any of your work? So these are the two that we wanted to run with. What I'll do is leave you to make a decision as to whether you want to give your own theme or you a poem after your own theme, or you want to talk about this whole idea of the anxiety of performance, the authenticity of your voice, whether you feel you are being an imposter or not. And with that, we will wind up the session for tonight.
Okay. So the if you could just touch on the imposter bit again, so that I know how to
Yes.
get
So
back. Yeah.
so here is the thing. You are a writer. You are a poet. You are within a community of poets. There is a history of poets. For you to stand out and say that I'm now going to deliver something that is a poem at par with these other people.
Yeah.
Are you confident enough that what you are seeing will pass the test? Are you really a poet, or are you just pretending to be?
At the moment, and I think because of experience, because I've been doing this for, if I'm looking at it from in terms of Ghana, I've been doing this since Ghanaians have known me as 100% since the beginning of 2011. So, with that experience in mind, I can get up and say, oh, yeah, sure. If I get up and I'm doing something, because I have records to back it up. But the truth is, and I'll give you an example, and this is before I won the slam, the first Halakasa's first slam. There was a poem that I had. I wasn't sure. And I think it happens to the best of us. You write a poem and you have no idea. You think it's okay, you think it's cool, but you have no idea how the audience is going to respond to it. And I remember there was a festival happening at Nubuke, so I said, okay, let me try this there. And when I performed the poem, I wasn't expecting the that kind of response from the audience. They loved it in a very interesting way, a way that I wasn't expecting them, to that. So that made me realize, oh, okay, this is actually a great poem in terms of from an audience reaction, point of view. There have been times I've written a poem that I thought was great, and I didn't get the reaction that I wanted to from the poet. So what I would say about that is, do I get anxious? Of course I do. Even sometimes when you have a gig and you're going to perform, I say it makes me human. If I'm not nervous, especially if I'm doing something in front of a crowd that I do not know. When you're doing stuff in front of people, you're a bit, you're a bit cool. But when it's in a new space, of course you get anxious. But I think that when you are doing something new that nobody has heard before, you can only tell after the piece is done. It is when the feedback hits you that you know that you've delivered. It's when if you tell a guy, hey, would you marry me? It's only when
It's only when you are married.
only when she says no or yes that you know whether. Until then, it's false hope. You need the feedback is what will tell you whether yes you still got it or not. And yesterday's price is not it's not today's price. Just because it worked for these people, yes, it doesn't mean that it's going to. And I think understanding that keeps you just humble enough to realize that it's a gift, and how you allow it to flow through you and how you respect the art form would keep you going. So that's what I'll say about the anxiety
Yeah.
and whether are you good enough. It reads because a new poet could come on the scene, nobody knows them, they will deliver a poem and say, oh my gosh, this is the greatest. And it's just because the poem worked. It doesn't mean tomorrow the person can write a poem and it will do the same. So
Right.
that's how I feel about that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that maybe we can take your comment on that, and then we finish with 2 points, one from 100%, and then from Nia Martin.
I hold a slightly different perspective. I think I'm my harshest critic. And so, if for me personally, anything I put out there, I've fallen in love with. And once I've fallen in love with, it is my personal belief that if my audience doesn't fall in love with it, that is their personal problem. and in the very, I think the second poem I did, I spoke about the power of fear, the inhibiting power of fear. So my approach to poetry and recital is fearless, I would say. There's no rule for fear. If anything at all, somewhat there's some anxiety. Okay. I look forward to the day, 2 days to the day, and I haven't written my poem. And I just know that before I get on stage, it will come. I don't know how it will come, but it will come. And it's what I preach, that your unparalleled potential. Just believe. It's somewhat like what religion is based on, faith. Just believe. And I just believe. And well, so far so good. Maybe my bad day is coming, but so far so good. Yes. So yeah, those are my comments.
Okay, one message again from Andy, and he says that it's an important point you've made about reading the audience, and also he's saying that the question of whether audience validation is important, but he suggests that audience validation will vary. I guess that is essentially, what you have also said. Yeah. Before we take the final set of readings, you have copies of your book, right?
Yes, I.
Okay, so there are some copies of Logoligi Locomotion. It's a really interesting title. And before we end, we will also talk about your show.
Okay.
Yeah, but how much does it cost?
The ones I have here are 25.
Okay, so that's 25 CDs. We'll display them at the end of the event. So please, I invite you to give us your closing poem.
Okay. For the closing poem, I would like to perform the poem 37, which is also the first poem inside the book. And I would want to perform this with the instrumental that I've provided. And this and the first one, if you liked it, it's available on Spotify. You can also gain access to it by just looking up 100% on any of the streaming platforms. You'll find this piece I'm performing as well as the first one I did, and I think about 3-4 other tracks inside them. Yeah, so yeah, would be great. For some reason, it sounds a bit low. If it could just go up a bit, I'll be grateful. But still sounds low, but let's go with them. Okay. Welcome to my 37th station of imagination, where thoughts jump in somersaults at the birth of an idea. Summer is laughter. Conversations capture Kokonsa and try to give him to a pastor. Head of the automobiles blow their trumpets like rapture. Hawkers follow suit by calling customers faster. As for me, yes, I'm writing a chapter of poetry lurking around the city of fractures. The bus stops, the bus block, Chalewote goes flip-flop. My thoughts hip-hop to tip-top melodies go in crisscross. My thoughts tiptoe to poetry vehicles go in crisscross. My words ziplock to keep them fresh or not. For which watch? Create words can form cubicles with ideas and words to make spoken word unusual. This poem is strange, but at the same time it's beautiful chaos, making trends and also writing a musical. My poems are trotro minibuses with enthusiasm and flair. My poems crocodile drivers who flaunt the rules and don't care, like the poem parked by the corner about Abeku. A driver's mate whose only dream is to stay cool. Be the hype man for the next superstar, so stay tuned as he rehearses for his future role like a cartoon. Ho, ho! He screams like the wayside preacher, grabbing everyone's attention like Ghana must go. I've got poems at the station about people who know, who sold kaftans and dresses about people too known. There are unfinished poems about girls and their beauty, the kind that radiate and have men asking, who is she? Who are these emotions pivoting on a better tomorrow? A man of pleasure. Their poems are long and short like medicine. Still trying to understand the makings of the weather, like the unfinished poem of Fatima, the pear seller, whose footsteps massage the ears of the butcher Della, causing his jaw to drop and reminisce about Fela. Her eyes are transfixed to her backside. Her back provides danger like a landslide, but he is stuck like a tracker to a GPS signal. Stuck like a tracker to a GPS signal. He is stuck like a tracker to a GPS signal. Saniba. There's also the poem of Tata, the Kayaye Street porter, whose curves got lovers and spouses resetting her culture. Her curves and tight-fitting clothes are like a chisel to a porter, not letting go of money and admiring Ghana's daughter. There are visible poems of karma, juju, and love. Poems of Awuza Kuku and Kilewele at night. Poems of greed, disease, humility, leisure. Wait a minute. Also, pleasure in my 37th station of imagination. There are more poems than my eyes can see. Many are drunk on palm wine by the sea, ruled by disappointment, stung by fleas. I just bask in the chaos and confusion of the people, watching lives being created and mistakes being made. But life driving its fingers through the sands as slaves, beginning and completing another anthology of waves. Parking one vehicle, starting another, beginning a journey and ending another. And that's how the poems in this station roll. Each is a journey with a story untold. My imagination is a treasure of gold, filled with many more trips, many more roads. But now it is late, and the station must close. The money you pay will get you home. Maybe tomorrow I'll drive you slow, taking you places where poetry goes. Maybe tomorrow I'll drive you slow, taking you places where poetry goes. Bus stop. Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing us safely to the bus stop. Well, let's take a final one from you.
All right. So this poem is on a somewhat forbidden theme. And the title of the poem is Forbidden Fruit. I once heard someone say that cheating is a curse. Ladies, Gentlemen, who cares? I know there's at least one person who couldn't care less. And to that one person, don't be careless. There's always a choice to make, which involves a risk to take. And if you do have to meet, there's a lot at stake. And the tea is silent. For goodness sake, don't spill the tea. But if you make the decision, then move with precision, lest you cause division within your division. I'll tell you about one conversation in one consultation with one wise physician who, through much persuasion, determination, gave information. It helped me to reach this fruitful decision, mental incision, stick to fruits. Now, of all the fruits, you will all agree, like me with glee, for it is plain to see that that which is sweetest is that which is forbidden. That which will make you do its bidding. That which will unearth what you think is hidden. That which, when unearthed, leaves you panic-stricken. That which you cannot explain with, oh, I was just kidding. She was just sitting on my lap. I couldn't move. Yes, I was in bed, ridden, but I was bedridden. For a little pussy, I'm kidding. So when I pretend I'm law-abiding, me too, my time, like Joe, I'm biding. And when the text comes from the number I'm hiding, you will see me rise to the occasion. Forces start colliding, sliding, striding, riding, lightning striking. Who's presiding? It is I, Poseidon. And I will part these oceans. After all, I am a garman, a man of the sea, and women, I hear, love seamen. I'm from the shores of Ghana, which hosts the vicinity where the utmost clandestinity shall be revealed through divinity with the birth of a holy cathedral with wondrous ability. Oh, it will bring stability and last till infinity. Bring about unity. It will house the Trinity, even if it annoys the community. My God enjoys diplomatic immunity. Now, if you garner sufficient knowledge about Ghana, you'd realize that Ghana is no ordinary state. It's a state of affairs, where the state of affairs is that statesmen have affairs. Secret and holy pairs, funded by the public purse. I see many a lips are pairs. My purse is severe, but I'll persevere, because fine boy no dey pay. Oh, so they say. But please do pay attention to these words I say, for they are for reflection. Reflection. Speaking of which, the eye sees not itself, save for reflection. And if you are aware that in the side mirror, objects are closer than they appear, and it is unclear to your peers that the person on your side is closer than she appears, but you cannot allay the fears, Madame's gaze is fierce, powered from wisdom of the seers, and yet temptation nears. Would you whisper in temptation's ears, not today? Or you kiss temptation's neck and discover nectar? Do you have the backbone to resist shivers down your spine? Would you flee and find your own space when the stars do align? Or would you unbuckle Orion's belt and discover the Milky Way? Ha! Choices. Now I won't impose, but if you do suppose this prose is just for prose, then I oppose. It's for all of those who juxtapose the highs and lows, cons and pros, always on their toes because they chose. The option grows. In spite of love that grows, to spite, they lost their nose. Alone, they face their woes. For those, I dare propose. Your partner knows. Thank you.
Well, I didn't know it would end on a note of woo. But here we are. You know, I'm sitting here, but I've really enjoyed myself thoroughly. I mean, yes. You know, I said I was going to talk about your LLP series at the is it Cuckoo? Yeah. When in my mind it's always devolves to Kakun when I'm wondering
Yeah.
what's going on. So it's in Osu.
It's an
And the next one is on the 14th of July, right?
14th of July. Yeah.
Right. And so what time does it start?
It starts 7:30, I believe.
7:30.
7:30.
I'm just you see when I look at the style of poetry, and
Yeah.
I've never been to the LLP,
Yeah.
but it sounds like he should be a guest at LLP, right?
Yeah. The pretty much I think the inspiration for it is to recreate a safe space where artists, poets can come through. That part of the idea is also to let the audience also know that they are poets as well. So we always start with a writing prompt. People who haven't been to it before get very confused. Like, I came here to listen. I didn't come here to actually, share. But it's a very different vibe. Anyone who is there and wants to share is also welcome to share. Of course, when it's time for the guests to come in, they do their thing. But thereafter, people share. And the idea is to keep it as consistent as possible to hopefully inspire more of these spaces to continue around. And for people, I'll definitely want him to come and see the space and encourage other people to come and hopefully to grow it into a fruitful poetry community that people know that every month at least there's a place where we can come and network and share and vibe. Yeah.
Now, for you, Niamati, it would be a shame if all this poetry is hiding on your phone. And the only way we can get to hear it is if we draw you out. Is there a place we can interact with your work? Is it out there online? Is it there on a page somewhere?
Regrettably, no. Regrettably, no. So I've also taken a cue from what he said, and
Yeah.
I may participate in the next one because indeed it is all hidden on my phone.
Yeah, it's we'd like to propose that you unhide them. Yeah, so we can get to enjoy more of the poems. Well, so on this note, I would like to bring today's session to a close. I want to say thank you very much that people have joined us online. Thank you for spending your time. And then for those who have made it here, really appreciate it. But I do hope also that you enjoyed yourself. So it's not just that you came. We host several events here. There is going to be another at the end of the month, the last Wednesday. And then we are also in the build up to October, where we have a fully fledged literary festival. We call it Beja Literary Festival in Accra. So let's all keep eyes out for these events. And thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, audience.
Oh,
Have
it's
a good
been a
night.
pleasure.